welcome to Coffee Chats. This is our June edition. Sungi, how are we doing today?
Oh, we're good. It's raining a lot today in San Jose, so we usually would have liked to do it outside with the greenery in the background, as we, I think, genuinely have done for the past few months whenever we are in the same location, but unfortunately we're having to do it indoor today.
Yeah, it's a bit darker, but I think we're okay. It is strange though, right? It started raining at 9 o'clock this morning, and usually it doesn't rain till 1 or 2, so getting used to the kind of huge monsoon that's about to come for us.
Right.
I'm excited to chat with Sungi this month. I'm going to be interviewing Sungi, talk a little bit about your monthly note and some of the kind of updates from the month with maybe some personal elements as well. So I'm just excited for this chat. I want to start by talking about the professional growth that the organization, and I think you've seen over the last 6 months. We're at a midpoint, and as you write, it's so difficult to believe that we're at a midpoint because it feels like it just started.
I know.
But then we are at a midpoint. So having kind of had this kind of 6 months of work and operations at Pin Voyage, you know, the professional growth, whether it comes to funding, whether it comes to sales, it's been a decent year. I would say it's been a good year so far. What's led to that? Especially talk to me about sales, and I think you mentioned a little bit about it, but tell us more about how did we get here?
Yeah, and I think, thank you for the question. I think one element, I am very bad at keeping track of time in general. It's not my strongest suit. And I think especially more so during the pandemic, I just kept on losing track of time. And I think it was only with your recent journal and your reflection that I came to realize you're already halfway through the year. We are actually sitting here on the June, 30th of June, which is for us, it's the mid-year point. So yeah, I think there was just a lot that went on at Pin Voyage during the past 6 months, and especially with in February, us wrapping up the actual phase. I'm saying actual to not kind of differentiate it from the pilot phase that we had of Kovir, a virtual training, and wrapping that up in February and having a graduation for the biggest cohort yet, right? We had about 202 people, if I remember the number right, graduating from our program, and that I think alone was a biggest accomplishment that we could have ever asked for, especially during the pandemic. So that I think really kicked us off in the right way in the very beginning of the year, and we've implemented some projects in a smaller scale during the pandemic, including Canasta Básica, which is a basic basket of basic necessities that you would need at home, right? And that's a program that we introduced during COVID because quite a few producers in our network have expressed food insecurity that they were facing due to massive cut in their income. And so that we launched a small scale version of it last year. And this year we were really thankful to get bigger sponsorship from quite a few organizations that we would give a shout out later on in the year. You know who you are. So we are able to scale that work, which means a lot to us because we are not only able to provide the educational element as a support for our producers, but we are also able to provide more of a safety net for anyone to kind of lean on in the times in the times of needs, right? So I think that was another big element. And another thing that we also want to celebrate at Pin Voyage is gender policy that we launched early on in the year with another consulting company, Triptico. And we are currently in the researching phase of really unpacking the reality of every woman in the coffee value chain in Costa Rica, including producers, but also exporters, millers, importers, and baristas, and identifying and mapping them, and then designing right surveys and questions to inform a participatory policy at the end of the program. And lastly, I think going back to one of the questions, and I think that you're getting at about sales, and we're obviously this is not the right time to share the exact number because we're still finalizing the contract. There was quite a bit of delay, as you might have read already in the newsletter, regarding the challenges of the coffee leaving the port way later than we had all anticipated compared to last year, right? But at the same time, we were able to actually sell a lot more in terms of number of producers that were selling through our platform this year compared to last year. So I think all of this is a result of partnerships that we were able to garner during the past few months and also last year and few years going on. Some partnership didn't actually come back until until like I think how many years we spent like maintaining this relationship. I think you've definitely done a great job and like took a great leadership on a lot of the partnership that came to fruition this year. But I think all of it obviously is thanks to the work that I think our team is doing, but then a lot of it wouldn't have been possible without the support that we're able to get and the trust that we're able to get from our partners and everyone in our network.
Yeah, and it's you said more than last year, but I think more than the last 4 years combined, maybe in terms of sales, which I think is a lot of that constant conversation. I think we talk a lot about building relationship. Our model is called CARE because we focus heavily on in caring about each other in the entire value chain. And so I think that process of caring is slower, maybe not as faster, but it bears fruit in the long term, which I think is what you have to think about when you think about sustainability. So that's really helpful. Thank you for that overview of the last few months. If you've been following us, you've seen all of these things happen at different times. So thanks for all of your support and your encouraging words to us on that front as well. I want to change direction and talk a little bit more about the personal note that you wrote this time, talking about how despite all of these growth, there's probably been one of the more progressive, or not progressive, but a very kind of positive growth year for us as an organization. And you talk a little bit about your personal challenges the last 6 months where maybe it hasn't felt the same way on a personal level for you. You talk a little bit about languishing. Unpack that a bit more for me here and for everyone. Like, how has that struggle been, and how are you coping with that?
Right. I think so. As I was writing the personal note, and I think in general, as I was writing thinking about like what to share in this newsletter, because we were talking about it being the mid-year point. I took the liberty to kind of like look through my journals and see what was a recurring theme that I was writing about in the past few months, right? And I think in general, a lot of the positive words came about for professional aspect of like Voyage and like a lot of satisfaction from doing and achieving and conquering and just being really winning as a team and as an individual, also within the team. And I think a lot of positive words were around that. But I think when I was reflecting more on my personal life, I think one term that kept coming up was languishing. And then maybe back then when I didn't even have the word for it, was more of like feeling tired, feeling not thriving. It's like I think one word that I was also using of like, I don't know if I'm thriving was another element of like me bringing that up. And I think a lot of it kind of goes back to a therapy session that I had, and I recently, thanks to the support and recommendations of my friends around me who have like been really telling me about the benefits of it, signed up for a therapy. I've already I think it's my 3rd session that I did today, so it's quite recent. But within the 3 sessions, I think what I came to realize is that I was not putting my personal joy and my own kind of satisfaction as part of this equation as I was thinking about plan, or as I was thinking about like, I don't know, success is the right word, but success, for instance, or growth. I was always removing myself and my joy from it. And it might go back to, I think, what we're currently thinking with my therapist is it might actually go back to like the way I grew up with like in my household situation, right? Maybe I am the first child in the family, so that has always been there for me to kind of like look after someone else in my family. I had to like to take care of my little sister, but it was also like my entire cousin, like my related families that like we grew up with, that I was always responsible for taking care of them. So I guess it might even go back to as back as that, like past back as that. But then it was just kind of like the pattern that kind of emerged from a certain point where I was removing my personal joy from making something work. And if you're starting with that equation in mind, and I think eventually you are going to be compromising your own health, eventually you're going to be compromising your personal joy, personal relationship, and so forth to for the sake of growing something else that's like outside you. And so I think this was a great realization for me then to understand how do I unpack this equation then, kind of like unravel it so that I can put back my personal joy into this equation, so that it is sustainable and it works for everyone, you know, for my personal growth, but also professional growth, and as a whole, right? Because I think when one person isn't thriving in an organization, that organization is bound to fail. And I think we have really like prioritized in the past few months of like taking care of each other. And I think what I have been good at is recognizing that other people needed it, but not recognizing that for them myself. And I think you might also have that. We've had this chat of like us removing ourselves oftentimes from this kind of conversation. And you know, when a teammate asks for a leave, I'm like, yeah, please go for it, and like really like out there cheering them up. But then when it comes to me, I always kind of like removed it. So it's been quite an interesting experience to explore this side of me. I think through therapy for sure, and trying to really like sit from a third person's perspective, who's not my friend, who's always going to be on my side, who's not my family, who's also always going to be on my side, or me, like who's going to be biased about everything else, and having like someone else kind of look at it and let me know what they actually think about this.
For sure. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think it's for folks that have watched us over the years, I think it's not something that we often talk a lot about, and so I really appreciate, you know, the courage that it takes to share your experience. I think it does inspire. It inspires me, and I'm sure many other people, to explore, to bring their full selves to the work they do, whether it's a social enterprise or something else. Bring their full selves and not be worried of, oh, is this something that I shouldn't be bringing? And I think, especially this community that we make these videos for, it's a very small group of people, you know. It's an intentional group of people that we love and know that they care about our well-being as much as the well-being of the organization. And so being able to share this with this piece of us, of your journey with them is powerful. So thanks for sharing that. I want to talk a little bit about, in the note and in some of our conversations, you've talked a lot about bringing back that equation in a way that's maybe reconstructed or at least deconstructed at first, and then putting that joy back into the equation. In what ways? Because you've already talked a little bit about putting that back, and I think in the note write a bit about it. So tell us about some of the ways in which you're starting to do that slowly and steadily. I want to hear more about that.
I think personally, it's really, I think personally it might be like as small as like actually making time for myself every day. That's separate from what I'm already kind of doing. So I think I'm already quite used to doing yoga every morning, and that's something that I have to do in the morning before I start anything to be a human that's like, you know, ready to socialize kind of a thing, and cooking, you know, myself like a really good meal every day so that I show appreciation for myself. But I think that almost became like a default thing for me to even realize that's a way that I'm making time for myself. So I have intentionally carved out time to read before going to sleep, and I'm going to read about something that's just separate from my work as like one thing. And I also in the morning like journal for like 10 minutes, like small like, you know, journaling session every morning, in the morning before or after yoga. It depends on like how I feel physically when I wake up, but I try to carve that out. And I think I'm hoping that would give me the set my day, like give myself the permission, like I'm giving myself actively the permission to set agenda that fits my like intention, if that makes sense. So that's like personally, but I also know institutionally or like organizationally, I was really excited because I think Abby is one of the best person to cheer you up if you didn't know that. So I think it's always really grateful to have that support at all times to kind of like bring this kind of conversations into our you know, interaction. And then I think one thing that you have been really like advocating for within Pin Voyage, even like I think goes back to like 2 years ago when we started having, or even before when we started, because we used to have these crazy dreams that we wanted to have, like we wanted to like achieve at Pin Voyage. Right? I say crazy because some of them are like not even relevant sometimes to like the work. Like who said like, oh, you know, we'll start counting eggs.
Before the,
and I get really excited. And one of the ideas that recently came back to my mind, and obviously we're not going to share everything because that might be a reality in the future, and we're only going to share that. But one of those ideas that you used to talk a lot about was the happiness fund, and I remember feeling really excited about it because I think that was also the time when I was also thinking about the happiness project. And I think
and your thesis was also
my undergrad thesis was around this. So like I think the name itself and everything else that we talked about around this, and when you brought that up, like really like resonated with me. And then I remember being really excited about it. But then I think until this year, we couldn't actually like think realistically about it because it felt like it was kind of like out of our budget, like financial budget. So like what the happiness fund right now is, it's a personal development fund. We'll call it, I guess, like in the most conventional way, that every full-time staff at Bin Voyage will have access to a pool of money that they can apply for between July every year, so like halfway through the calendar year until next July. And then you can actually just tell us what you're going to use that money for. It doesn't matter as long as that contributes to your own personal joy and happiness. It can be any activities that sparks joy in your day-to-day life, or it can be a personal development classes that you've been meaning to take, but you just couldn't, cut out your, monthly check for it because it was kind of like out of your day-to-day thing. So we're dedicating this pool of money for anyone to apply and anyone to really use. And I think the whole idea came about like a few days ago. And we came back, like it's not like, it's been always there. Yeah, for like years.
Yeah.
So when we realized we could actually do it, like I just remember being like, and I know I am very excited, and I was already thinking like, oh, I know I'm gonna do this. I like had right away.
I actually don't know what I'm gonna do. Well, I'll have to figure
but we
out.
still have like a whole year,
yeah.
a whole year to figure out. So I think that's like one of the first ways that we can really put that personal joy for everyone into the equation of the organizational growth.
Yeah.
And I think what we'll have to do is making sure that everyone uses up this money, and if it's left over, that's actually a problem. And kind of like making sure that that's also part of our metrics for success of like, it will be like, we have to actually allocate this this resource 100% before next July, so that we also are making sure that everyone is conscious of that. Yeah.
For sure. And I think it's I must say we should give shout outs to the Watson Institute team because I think we learned it from them, and I think there's like a whole research and conversation around it. So it's definitely grateful for that learning, I think, for us. But I think what's interesting with this process is I think the process of putting back in the equation, it takes a lot of courage to say it's now time. And I think as founders, it's very important that we do that on a regular basis. It's not a one-time thing. That it's never like a band-aid to a problem, right? It's always your team, your community, with the evolution of the world, the way it's happening so fast. There are so many things that are changing, and we need to start looking at different things. So I think this is one thing that I'm really proud we're incorporating. You talked about therapy. I hope that many of us. I know I'm actually getting back into therapy as well. It's something that I haven't done for quite, I think it was like 4 or 5 years now. So hopefully that can be invested there. For some people, it might be taking a class. For some people, maybe it's going to a conference they always wanted to go, right? So hopefully there'll be a good kind of push in terms of like finding the right thing that then sparks joy. I know we talked about that last month. So it's really cool to be able to come back and bring this back. And I'm grateful that you brought that back because I think I had it in my head, but I had completely like missed it because it was like, oh yeah, like maybe it'll happen eventually. But I think you bringing that back, maybe from some personal reflection too. I think is already, I know when we shared with our team, they were mostly excited about. We shared quite a few exciting news, but they were mostly excited about this. So it's I think already creating an impact. Well, this is all really great. I know we're kind of towards the end of our conversation. We never know how long to record this because there's no timer. So if this was a TV show, we would know. But you talked about reading, and we never have a situation where we sit in front of books and record a video. This is the first time that we're sitting in front of books. So I thought we're going to do a little fun thing here. I just wanted to take a look at the books here. Is there one book that you recommend to people that are watching that you've read that you really loved and would recommend folks to take a read just from here?
Oh, okay. So the books that I'm reading currently and the ones that I really like and I revisit are actually in my bedside.
Bedside.
So I have a little table that I pile up and then I go
you have a
read
mini
it.
library in there. Yeah.
Because I usually read it right before going to bed, so I don't want to come out. So
Yeah.
I feel bad because I pick out my favorite books and put them, and that's not available. But anyone can come into my room and pick them up. So I obviously won't have them here. But out of this, I think what I really liked recently was what was it? This is not a recent book that I read, but Option B, I think this was also quite helpful. It talks about sense of hope and coping with adversity and building resilience and finding joy, and goes back to a lot about how one deals with grief and how the other person, because I've oftentimes been on the other side of the person feeling grieving or feeling sad, and I didn't necessarily know what would bring them comfort or joy. So this kind of gave me perspective on how I would have liked it if I were in that situation. Excuse me. And yeah, but I think in general, I just really like writing that Adam Grant does. So that was also
Very
the reason
simple,
why I got this book. But I read it. It's already been a couple of years or 3 years since I read it. I don't know when it came out, but I remember buying it almost right after. But yeah, it's for anyone that wants to that's grieving or has someone that's grieving. Would be really good.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the last year with COVID and the way the world is working right now, this might be an interesting book for sure. Thanks for sharing. Maybe next time we'll do the interview in the bedroom right next to the table stand and have more books.
I'll bring them out.
Yeah.
Bring my books out.
Any final kind of words, any asks from this month, anything that kind of you want folks to take action on from the last month?
Yeah, I think in general, we wanted to, as an organization, really express our deepest gratitude to everyone that showed up for us for the past few months. That I think was challenging for everyone, and despite the personal hardships, I think whenever we reached out, everyone just always welcomed us and responded in a very positive note. So, just a big shout out to everyone that's watching, and also to everyone that's been in our network for the past few months and few years. I think I've also reflected this with you in the past, and I've also personally have reflected a lot on this. I think it only requires that one person to trust in you before you can jump off and do something bold. And I think we have been very fortunate from the beginning to have a collective of this one individuals that really touched us and really showed us the confidence and trust to be able to do it. So we're really excited to continue building what's possible for Bin Voyage the way it makes sense for us. And we know that you're going to be there for us throughout. So really appreciate you and thank you.
Cool. Well, thanks for this chat. Very kind of, lively chat and also very kind of honest conversation. I think all of that is kind of the beauty of the organization, and you, I think, bring that to the organization. So thanks for the conversation, and we'll see you all next month's coffee chat. Follow along, social media stuff that we always do. We never put the link, but just you know where to find the links.
Yeah.
I think I might just add, as I'm wrapping up this, starting the last couple of months, we've started putting more on Medium. So if you're someone that does enjoy reading blogs, you're going to see a lot more blogs that are coming up. So do check that out, and we'll see you in the month of July. Have a wonderful end of the month.